This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created Zapbox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Rony Abovitz and Ted Shilowitz for This Week in XR. It's June 14th, 2024, and our show 199. Good morning, guys.
199 shows. Could you believe it, Charlie?
And we have a great guest for show 199, Jeri Ellsworth, the creator of Tilt 5, CEO of Tilt 5. It's a gaming system that uses an AR headset to change the meaning of board games.
Yeah.
So we'll look forward to chatting with Jeri. Is sort of a gaming legend, having worked at Steam and other companies. So she knows a lot about a lot. So we'll look forward to hearing about. And also, obviously Tilt 5 always has a big presence at AWE.
Yeah, I imagine they'll be in Long Beach with us. So anybody that's going will be able to see her tech. Yeah.
So gents, Siri and Apple. I mean, what do you think, Ted? You're our Apple guy. What did you think of WWDC?
I got to tell you, I thought it was a little lackluster. I thought, the overall TV show / keynote, it's no longer a keynote. It's just a TV show that Apple produces, was, pretty finely polished. I think for us, the impact of Apple sticking to their guns on Vision Pro and not backing off is a good sign. I think they well know their hardware problems now and they realize it, but they're going to deliver this product, throughout the world, and it seems to be taking off well. On the AI front, okay, they announced what we thought they were going to announce, and then the stock shot through the roof over the last couple of days. But really, they're not doing anything remarkable, I don't think. Do you guys? There's a lot of controversy around the fact that their whole privacy mantra is such a big deal, and they seem to be kind of pseudo abandoning it, or kind of like, well, no, it'll still be private, but it kind of won't be private. And I don't know, maybe you guys have some opinions on it.
What do you think, Rony?
I think first of all, it's good they didn't abandon Vision Pro. Maybe they heard us at South by, which was
maybe
great.
Let's hope so.
Tim's like furiously writing notes.
Make it lighter. Yes.
Look, I think the most surprising thing for me was this relationship with OpenAI. And that's just odd in the sense that Microsoft owns like a large portion of them. And all the drama and hullabaloo over the last 6 months about what's been going on there, now they do a deal with Apple.
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess it's like they're going to try to make money wherever they can. But when I think about Apple's brand and the kind of weird cloud around OpenAI, wasn't there something they could do differently? Like, is that the brand you want to attach yourself to? You have any resource in the world, you can build whatever you want yourself. Why go to one of your real prime competitors, even though they work together, like Office stuff sits on Macs and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're really mortal enemies when it comes down to it at the end.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was gonna comment on. When you look at the storied history of the Apple company and the Microsoft company, people think that they have like these two completely separate camps, but they're actually very intertwined companies. At one point, Microsoft actually saved Apple's existence, right?
They saved Apple's existence to save themselves.
Right? So if you go back,
what a great story that is! I teach that story in my class.
It's an amazing story.
It is a great story because, and I'll hit it just like in 2 minutes here for people who aren't aware of it. In 1996, Microsoft was locked in a fight to the death with the Justice Department over the desktop. Mm-hmm. And they were going to lose control over their own desktop. It was looking dire. It had all of the earmarks of a terrible monopoly that they were wielding anti-competitively. And at that very moment, Apple was in its darkest place. They had just kicked out John Sculley. Steve Jobs was going to come back with Next Computer somehow, and they were going to try and save the company. But they're a hardware company, and they had
their
no
stock
money.
was at the lowest point of their entire
They were a
existence.
hardware company with no money to make hardware. So their backs were against the wall. They only owned 5% of the market. But Microsoft thought, as it turns out correctly, if we can just keep Apple alive with 5 or 10% and prospects, it's good. That's proof that we're not anti-competitive.
Correct.
So they loaned Apple $150 million, which was real money in those days. Today, it would be like $150 billion.
Yes.
But they loaned Apple $150 million. It allowed Jobs to have a little bit of running room that he needed to revive Mac. And so that is the story. Of course, they had warrants for shares. They got their money back less before
100 times over.
before the dot-com boom, but ultimately it was a multi-billion-dollar move for Microsoft and Bill Gates, and it diffused. They still lost the case, but there wasn't much for the Justice Department to do then, and so their strategy really paid off. Right. And it's just a great business story, great for Microsoft, and of course, great for Apple. And look at what Apple has become. It's become Microsoft's equal, if not arguably the greater company because of its accomplishments with the iPhone and disrupting the music industry, and its potential to do much more with healthcare and other very, very important aspects of our lives.
Yeah, if you want a super deep dive into that story and many others, sort of in the nuance of this interesting relationship between Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and the entire Microsoft world and the Apple world, there's a great podcast I listen to called Acquired. And they do these deep dive stories. So it's like if you have a lot of time, like long car rides, like their podcasts are like 6 hours long, but they literally go through the entire history of companies. They did a 6-hour episode on the NFL. The whole beginning of the NFL to today. It's fascinating. A 6-hour version on Hermes. Like, it's unbelievable. And they do one on Microsoft. And there's this whole story, but you just told the 5-minute one. They tell the 45-minute one. Yeah. And it's unbelievable, like how to listen to it all. So I would love to get them. We should do a crossover podcast between ours and theirs. It's an amazing podcast.
I love those stories. And so let's hit the news real fast, the other news. But, because we could do, I think we always say this every other week, that we could do a whole show on Apple, and we probably should. Vision Pro, interesting Vision Pro. The New York Times dropped 2 great stories about what was going on at Apple this week. So if you're a Times subscriber, I definitely recommend taking a look at them, including one saying, can Apple save the Vision Pro? So it's a much more critical view of it. Of course, I don't think they quite understand that it's a developer version that was wrongly marketed as a consumer product. But setting that aside, there's also, the Times was much more, as I am, cutting Apple much more slack for really going after Siri and making it what it is supposed to be, which is the app that controls the other apps for you, and knows you and can learn from its interactions with you. So if Apple pulls that off, I think it could be as revolutionary as the iPhone itself.
I want to bring up something interesting without naming the people, but the 3 of us know some young entrepreneurs who probably showed us an app 6 months ago, which was a hack of having Siri call OpenAI and made Siri much better. And I think those kids showed that to Apple. I don't want to name who they were, but it was a very interesting app. And I told them they had no lifespan on it because, why would Apple need them to do it? But they showed me a really cool demo of they somehow hacked Siri and it was doing OpenAI calls. And it's just slightly coincidental to me that a group of kids like that might have gone to Apple, might have shown that there, and now it's being announced.
I actually, Apple, there's more to the story of that company, unfortunately, and that is not their fate. But they did do something that was obvious. By the way, For
It's
all
a
the
bit
talk
obvious,
about
right?
OpenAI and Apple, honestly, you just download their app and you talk to it with voice. It's got some problems. It doesn't remember things that well. It can't print. It doesn't cross over to the other version, the desktop version. So there are issues with it, but you can do that today, and you can literally get it to answer questions like, better than Yelp, honestly, because it's read all the reviews on all the other sites, and uh, but unfortunately, you have to be standing there with a piece of paper ready, ready to write down what it says. But it shows you it's not that hard. Which is, I think, your point, Ronnie. It's like,
Like
why didn't
three
they do this
kids.
sooner? Yeah, why didn't they do it sooner? But
Yeah.
again, with Siri, I would say the twist is you're taking that power of OpenAI and you're actually allowing it to operate the phone for you.
Yes.
So that's, I think, where
Which
they
is a little. Here's the tricky thing: all the IP, all the copyright issues bundled into OpenAI. Is there some transitive property that by Apple partnering with them, is there some hand waving, but is Apple blessing this idea that copyrights IP don't matter? And we also saw in the last 2 weeks Adobe putting odd things into their
Oh
UI,
yeah, it's a big
like
brouhaha, the Adobe
claiming
thing.
things that you're doing now feed the Adobe machine. And like Adobe's been a trusted partner for like
right. I know,
decades
I know.
to all
A
kinds
lot
of
of
artists
artists
and
are asking the
creatives.
question, what Adobe is using my stuff for something?
Yeah. And forcing me to sign a terms and conditions that has never shown up in any Adobe licensing
And those EULA
before.
things are so creepy because
Yeah.
no one ever reads them, and
So
So
enough people
is
that
there
use
a
Adobe read them and freaked out, and they're like, "What is going on here?"
well, I
Yeah.
guess here's the question. Is there going to be a massive backlash, or are companies, big companies, betting that they're just going to put the foot on the head of creatives and smush it to the ground and you have no choice? If enough of them do it together, if Apple and Microsoft and Google and Adobe and everyone just puts your head to the ground, are people going to feel helpless, or is it going to create a huge backlash movement to try to find alternatives? It's kind of an interesting thing, but I
Yeah.
never thought Adobe would go this direction.
Yeah, yeah. So here's
So
here's the question for you guys. Do you think that the basis of Apple, what I refer to as their lackluster kind of AI announcement, because I was expecting them to actually like show Siri actually working the way it should, right? And they didn't. They were like, "Well, it's coming, it's coming." Do you think it was just all the lawyers like, "You can announce it, but don't show it actually doing anything because we still haven't figured all this out yet." So they're like, "Well, we need to announce AI because our stock price is affected by that. We have to make the announcement." But there and I mean, how hard would it be to show an actual viable working Siri
Well,
that doesn't
I
screw
think I
up? You
think
know?
a lot of people thought that the OpenAI involvement with Apple AI and Apple, what they're calling Apple Intelligence, was actually less than they expected. Apple also said that they would be including Gemini and others in
Yeah,
similar ways, so that you basically can choose the language model that you
that you
feel
want,
is
which kind of makes sense.
most compatible with your work.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying. Sam Altman was not on stage; he was actually photographing, talking to people in the audience.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I thought they downplayed the
So
OpenAI.
maybe that's why. Maybe just the legal concerns are so great, and Apple's just like,
I think they
we'll announce
also.
it, but
It may be too soon for them. They may be sort of let's be a friend to all and really see how this is going to shake out the next two
yeah.
3 years. Mistral is in the mix. They just raised 600 billion.
600 million.
600.
600 million. Although the way things are going, 600 billion wouldn't be off the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But good on Mistral. So now there are really four companies going at it. So that should be pretty. And it's funny because Nvidia, Salesforce, all the usual suspects are there along with Andreessen. Sort of funding everyone.
Yeah.
Right. They're not, no one is going to get left out. So two metaverse stories I want to cover, then we'll go to Jeri. Metaverse, yes, the Sandbox gets $1 billion valuation for a company that has less than 100,000 simultaneous uniques. I think this is a pretty shocking valuation, but guess who the lead investor was? Animoca Brands that
Mhm.
owns and operates the Sandbox. So
Yeah. It's
we'll be taking that with a giant grain of salt, but good on Yatsiu, I guess, because it's now worth $1 billion if he's going to take money from elsewhere. It probably is good news for people who hold Sand, their cryptocurrency. So, but If that's a sign that the metaverse is alive, and I'm not saying necessarily that it is, I'm not sure what that story means. But our friends at VRChat just laid off 30% of their staff.
Yeah.
And that's probably less than 100 people. So, on one hand, that isn't the biggest layoff in tech. But on the other hand, this is a company that's a unicorn, also worth over $1 billion, or at least they were. And a third of your company, if you're standing inside of it, is a tremendous blow. That is very, very disruptive.
Yeah, and no surprise. I mean, again, these industries move from this attempt to overblow their market share and their value into the world. I mean, VRChat still, to me, a great startup organic story, and they just grew too big, and their market and audience just legitimately isn't as big as investors think. So sooner or later, the bottom falls out.
But
And
Second Life has made a go of it with an audience of,
sure,
let's say 750,000 people.
yeah, for many,
And
many years. Yeah.
and VRChat has no virtual economy. If they have a way, I think Fiverr is probably making more money off of VRChat than VRChat is
Mm.
right now. So I know they have a premium offering, but it's $100 a year, and how many people really are going to do that?
Yeah.
So I don't know how it's a business. I know that at least Meta Horizons, they're starting to sell accessories and behave a little bit like Fortnite, which is good. It shows that there's scale and there's an economy, and that there's some hope that users can participate and make money if they can contribute artistically to that economy. So, but they had nothing like that at VRChat after 8 years. I mean, WTF? No mobile app.
They did announce that they did announce that they were going to be sort of multi-platform, kind of like Rec Room, right? But it just never came to fruition.
Why? Why? I don't get it. Okay, let's bring in Jeri.
Okay.
By the way, awesome stuff happening in cinematic AI for generative video.
Yeah, this Luma thing is
Lu-
all the buzz, all the rage now.
The Dream Machine
Hmm.
generates video up to 16 seconds. There's also another one called Kling out of China that you apparently can use, but you need a China email address. Jeri Ellsworth, thank you. Great to
Hello,
see
how are
you.
you?
Great to
Hey,
see you.
Jeri.
You know everybody on the call?
Everyone's looking familiar here.
Well, big news, AWE, less than a week away.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's a great event.
And are you speaking as well as exhibiting?
Yeah, I'll be speaking on a panel with Carl Gutag, who analyzes
Oh,
Yeah.
every device out there. That's always fun.
that's a must see.
Yeah,
Carl minces no words.
He really doesn't.
Carl knows all.
Yeah.
yeah. I think I'll try to be a little bit contrarian to what he says, just to spice it up a little bit.
Mm.
We uh, we tend
We,
to play off
we ever
each
had
other pretty
Carl
well
on
that
this
way.
show?
Sorry, what was that?
We have it. That would be fun.
I'm sure he would do it. I was talking to him recently, and he was saying, like, he's really into doing a lot more video.
Getting the word out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very segmented audience that, I'm sure all of us read Carl's stuff and relish it because he's so honest and so candid about what he does. He's the ultimate
Yeah.
teardown
He
guy, right?
doesn't have a dog in the fight. I would also
No,
put
he
out
just looks at the
Anshel
stuff and
Sag.
knows what it
I'd
is.
put Anshel Sag out there too. He tries everything and is
Yeah.
quite direct. Scott Stein is another guy.
Mhm.
So we do have a lot of great sources who have no dog in the fight. They're calling him like they see him, and of course as we know, they can also be cruel if you miss.
I about wet my pants when I saw him the first time get in line for our demonstration. I'm like,
And you're like,
oh my God,
uh-oh,
there's Carl.
uh-oh.
I told our folks, like, I gotta
Jerry,
go
you
intercept
you
him in the
snake
line.
charmed him because he somehow was the nicest review I've ever seen him give anybody was Tilt 5.
Huh.
Well, Tilt 5 has one of the best demos on the floor. I'll give that to you, Jerry. That it's very well done. People come back and do it again.
Yeah, every year it's the same people. Sometimes we haven't even, yeah, we have our lineup of demos, which are, you get in and out really fast, and it's different than like full length games and things like that. But people will just come back and play them every single year, even though it's the kind of same lineup sometimes.
Okay, but hold on, because here we go again. Oh, we're talking, inside baseball, and all these listeners are like,
that's true.
okay, what the hell are they talking about? So,
Yeah.
Jerry, back up
What
a
is
step.
Tilt 5?
Right. Even though we all, of course, know what it is, there's plenty of people
Who
that
are
don't know what
you
we're
and
talking about.
who are you and what is Tilt 5?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I got over my skis there a little
Yes,
bit.
as we do it, we all do it. It's okay.
We're all guilty of it.
Yeah. So I'm Jeri Ellsworth. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tilt 5. We're an AR headset company with a very narrow focus on group experiences. So whether it's gaming or in the office or classroom, we've really designed our system so people can sit around a table and have this holographic experience together. And we did this through a lot of compromises. And to Roni's point, I think that's why Carl liked us so much is like, he appreciated the compromises we made to hit a price point, fields of view, brightness, ease of use. And those are the areas that we really excel in. It doesn't do everything that we dream of, walking down the street and having monsters jump out of the side of buildings, but what we do, it does really well.
So why don't you explain it? Explain what the tech is, where you can buy it now. It's a commercial product. Give people a sense of what you're actually doing with this stuff.
Yeah, so the technology was actually developed, the optical side of it was developed by me. It was a total accident. I was working at Valve Software almost 13 years ago now, and I made this observation about the special optical property where we can use a special type of screen that you just roll out onto your table. And light that strikes this screen returns right where it came from. So instead of having like glasses that just put light directly in your eyes, we just emit a light field out from the glasses that strike the table, or it could be mounted on a wall, and it returns back to each user. And there's a lot of virtues to that. It's very comfortable to look at. It's very low cost, and we commercialized that a couple years ago. It's been shipping for a couple years. Prices gotten more attractive as we start to build more and more units. And you can just go to our website. It's tilt5.com, just spelled out. You can buy
With
it. In
number
fact,
5.
correct, 5. Yeah, spelled.
It's got a very
And-
70s roller derby vibe to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, the name, we came up with that because this was my second startup, and the first one bombed poorly, bad. And we had a string of CEOs coming in, and every time that they came in, they renamed the company and spent ungodly amounts of money. So my co-founder and I are like, let's come up with a name that, makes us laugh. So it's an inside joke that we can't tell anybody. And it's so generic. So if we're doing network routers 30 years from now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have XR, AR, or gaming, attached to it. And yeah, we get a lot of joy out of the name, and our logo is very auto themed. I used to race
Yes.
cars, so it's really kind
I'm
of
sorry. Wait. You used to what?
yeah, my first career. I ended up dropping out of high school to be a professional race car driver. So there's a circuit that runs up the West Coast called the I-5 Challenge, and I ran quarter-mile dirt track cars, late model, and sprint cars. So this is 800 horsepower cars with funny wings on them, going sideways with 30 or 40 other cars on the track and flipping over.
Wait, how did you end up doing? You dropped out of high school to do that?
I
So
started
most
making
girls
so
drop
much.
out of high school to chase a band.
Well, I lived in this logging town, and there was a racetrack nearby, and I thought that was really cool, and I really wanted to do it, and I kind of had a knack for it, and I did quite well. And I started making so much money, it made no sense to stay in high school anymore because I was making tons of money. I was sponsored by British Petroleum, and it was a really exciting 5 years. And then I jumped over to technology, which is my true passion.
So you
It's
finished
still
you finished high school and then went to Stanford? I mean, what happened?
No, I've never graduated high school. I'm kind of proud of that. I just got an honorary doctorate though,
That's
from
awesome.
Well, where?
UAT, out of Phoenix. So that was really a great honor to get that, just a recognition of all the work that I've done. So
Amazing.
thank you to those guys for recognizing, and I still haven't graduated from any institution.
That is amazing. So how did you learn how to be a hardware scientist?
I think it was my father. He was a great mentor, and I was always a curious kid, ripping apart all my toys, and I really wanted to know how they worked. And he nurtured that. After getting over his frustration of me tearing apart all the, early home computers I got and toys and things like that, and he started just bringing old electronics home to let me rip it apart. And I started to get this intuitive feel for how electronics works, and then over the decades, even before I got into doing engineering, I had a lot of great mentors. And then when moved to Silicon Valley, I found a lot of mentors that kind of taught me. And that's how it really works in the real world. You go to school and you learn a lot of things, but when you get on your first job, that's where you really start learning, working with the gray hairs that um, have seen it all before. And I'm starting to get some gray hair, so I'm moving into that domain now.
Yeah, well, you're nowhere near us. So, and by the
Well,
way, maybe that's why Carl actually loves you, is because you like to rip apart computers, because that's what his real love is rip it apart and see what's really going on behind the hood.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah. We really resonate that way. And it's funny, I was talking to Carl the other day. He's like, he made his blog not to do XR, like optical analysis of headsets. He did it as a place to document all of the really cool things he did in the past. Like he designed video chips that were in a lot of the
sure.
early game consoles,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is when I found that out, I got kind of weak in the knees and started gushing.
I wonder if the race car background and the sort of true guts of computer background are not too far afield from each other.
They're
These
not.
complex machines that are very powerful and can be very dangerous in the wrong hands. So there's a lot of kinship between those two fields, I think.
Yeah, I think I had some good mentors when I started racing too. There was this guy out of Florida that took me under his wing, and I was going from Oregon and driving a Greyhound or riding in a Greyhound bus for 4 days to work with him for, going back and forth and doing that. But he taught me, you know, this applies to products too. I was talking about safety one day with him. Like, I want a really safe race car, and he's like, it's all trade-offs. Like, if you want to be 100% safe, you'd be driving a Sherman tank around the track, but you would lose. So, how much
Hmm.
on the edge are you going to be, with safety and making the car light and thinner materials? Like, and the same thing in products. You can't put everything into a product. It's what do you throw out of the product that actually makes a lot of products brilliant.
Don't you guys feel that Cameron Crowe needs to make a movie about Jerry,
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
Almost Famous?
almost a race car driver?
I think
Almost.
I think what people don't realize, like Jerry's like Steve Wozniak level hardware hacker,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh, no.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Like I've seen all the crazy stuff, and it's sort of like, yes, I think it needs to be like a Netflix or Apple TV Plus doc. Well, Ted,
Give
do you
me
know
another
people at
20 or
CAA?
Give me another 20 or 30 years. I have a few more things I want to do.
Well,
Or
this is
tilt.
how you, Jerry. This is how you get Tilt 5 super funded. You get like what Meow Wolf did. They just somehow had a documentary film made early on, and it was just everywhere, and it won something at Sundance or one of those festivals. So you need like the Jerry Tilt 5 story, and everyone's like,
Eh,
"Oh, I got to fund Jerry." Like, I mean, you need something like that.
oh, I've been approached quite a few times to, have people come through and follow us around in the office, and I figured that I couldn't, play it up enough for the camera and punch holes in the walls like all those, uh, fake documentaries that play on Discovery Channel.
Jerry, what are the software experiences that are available for Tilt 5 users now?
Oh, it's getting pretty exciting out there. There's obviously a lot of games, so you can hunt around our website, and then there's a lot of stuff that individuals are making we haven't even discovered. That's one of our frustrations is we go to a trade show and folks say like, "Hey, I built a thing," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you tell us? We would be promoting for you." But the new areas that are really growing for us right now is in education and training. We've been seeing a ton of really interesting content out there for students. So there's several companies that are going to be releasing these pretty comprehensive packs of educational modules. And they range from kind of middle school, high school, And we're also seeing a lot of cool things happening in higher education as well. So, because our system's a couple $100 a headset, a lot of universities have been
Although it's
checked
PC based, you need a gaming PC to
or
run.
Android phone right now.
Oh,
You can
they
plug
can
it
run on
in.
an Android phone? Oh, that's so
Yes.
cool. Wow, that's great.
Yep. But yeah, these university labs that have game programs or doing data visualizations have been buying them in like bulk, buying them like 20, 30 at a time and just decking out their labs, and a lot of cool stuff coming out of that as well.
There's another application that I saw in an art gallery where people were walking around with this tiny PC called a Curve in like a
Oh yeah.
pouch, right? And they put on the Tilt 5 headset and they were hanging these reflective mats from the walls.
That's
So you
always the
saw,
first thing people say when they experience it the first time they can see wherever this reflector is, that they're like, I'm just going to make a room and make a holodeck. And um,
and you can.
you can. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe VR would be, easier than hanging curtains up all over your, reflective curtains. But
For
yeah,
the listeners, it's just like looks like gray fabric. It's not exotic. It's just
Yeah.
you just throw it down like a piece of carpet or felt. It's kind of look like gray felt, basically.
Well,
yeah,
the
yeah,
metaphor, the initial metaphor was like a game board.
Yeah, it can be a
yes.
little size or a big size. You make it any size you want. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on the marketing side to try to keep our message very clean about, like, it's something you can just deploy on your coffee table at home. It's just flip the board open, roll it out on the table, and go. But yeah, there's quite a few individuals and companies that are starting to do much bigger things. There's a group out of LA. I'm spacing their name right now, but they're doing a geodesic dome, and they plan on.
Oh, they're using the glasses for that instead of actually direct projection. They'll put.
Well, they're putting the reflective material on this like collapsible dome thing, and
Huh,
the concept is to have pop-up events where you can go feed a dinosaur with all your
interesting.
friends. Or
Yeah, that's cool.
it's pretty neat
What's
stuff.
Yeah, that
your
would be crazy.
what's your favorite game in the platform, or what are the like? What's the top rated game? The one that people just write back to you and go, "I love this. We want more of this."
I think my favorite single player game is Headlands. It's very Zelda-like. It's very colorful. The game theme is there's like baddies out in this giant universe that's trying to steal your imagination. So as they steal more of your imagination, the color like gets more like
Still color.
muted.
Yeah.
And that's a great, 20-hour single player game. My by far favorite game to play, and this was created by a gentleman that just put it together over a couple weekends. It's called Go Monster Go. It's free. And it's great. You grab a couple drinks with your friends and you sit around the table, and it's very much like Fall Guys. So it's you're running a gauntlet, a race, and there's hammers and chompers and springboards and stuff, and you're trying to get to the goal first, but the characters have ragdoll physics, so you're like tripping over things, and then your friends around the table, they see you trip, they can like run over and push you over a cliff,
Hmm.
and it's the metagame on top of it makes it extremely fun because the game is simple, but the number of permutations of how you can kind of mess up your friends is endless in it. And the alliances that form. So like people are picking on you all the time. All of a sudden alliances shift and you get some people to go like pick on somebody else. And
Because of the popularity of board games, right? People love to buy board games. They spend typically 60, 70, $80 for a board game like a Settlers
Mhm.
of Catan or something. Has a Walmart or a Target or any of the mass retailers ever approached you to try and package this up as an alternative to, like, it's a light touch technology, but it is kind of the next extension of how you would play a board game with your buddies at home? Or is it just still the price point just a little out of their target zone? I'm curious why it's not like a massive, every Walmart in the world is selling this thing kind of thing.
Well, I can't give you details on what's next for us, but there's some exciting
Okay, maybe I
distribution.
just dropped into something there by accident. That's good.
Well, there's the classic Osborne effect out there, like the famous story of Osborne Computer where they tanked all their current sales. So I'm going to dance around this kind of carefully, but there is
Understood.
broader distribution coming with our system, which is exciting.
Great.
Um, on the board game side, we do have some pretty fun board games out there. There's Takanoko that is a pretty classic game. You can play with multiple people, over the internet, over distance, or you can have multiple people local or any combination. Settlers of Catan, that's getting queued up to come out, and there's a couple other titles. Um, so
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of
if you got the
like
license for Catan, that's a big deal. Settlers of Catan is a
So-
humongous game, massive, amount of players using the old-fashioned cards and a board, right? So
I
if
was
you've
gonna
got
say like Magic the Gathering, D&D, like where every city's got a shop where like geeky kids hang out and they play that. I just thought like that plus Tilt 5 is an unlock to something like 100 million plus people.
hmm
What
Yeah.
what
well,
do
in
you
the VR, all the VR companies have danced that dance too, to a certain
but
degree.
VR is a terrible way to do it, right? Tilt
Right.
5, you can hang out at that
Yeah, it's
card
more
shop.
social. Yeah, you can see
It
each other.
feels like made for that. Like, do you think something like that's coming? I know there's been experiments in it, but I thought that was like once Magic the Gathering at Comic-Con does a Tilt 5 thing, it's like boom. And it seems so obvious.
So, Ronnie, I think to your point that you brought up earlier, like as a small startup, we've been massively underfunded. Like we built this product on $7.5 million.
So hard in hardware.
Yeah, I mean, it's kudos to our team to like build such a complete product on so little money. And that's why we're excited that there's some bigger entities kind of entering into the picture now that are,
You
better.
just need help to hold that much inventory.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a lot of atoms.
I mean, we had good partners like Silicon Valley Bank, gave us some venture debt for, which has been super helpful to
Oh
float the
yeah,
inventory. But I mean, still, if you put,
getting expensive.
yeah, you put us in perspective of Reality Labs, one of our investors like back calculated like our yearly run rate is 15 minutes of
Yes.
of of their yearly burn.
By the way,
Uh,
Jerry's an example of like what America's actually kind of terrible at right now. Like hardware startups, uh, the funding for it is very Byzantine, and it's very unlike what happens in China, Korea, Japan. Like if Jerry was a Chinese company, she'd be incredibly well funded.
mhm.
She would have access to all the different things that she. But if she was there, right? But in America, it's very difficult, right? When you get capital as a hardware company, it's like the blue moon rises. There's sort of a wave, and then all of a sudden people like backlash because uh, if you're Steve Jobs and Wozniak building Apple, or even building a PC company like Dell in the 80s or Alienware early, not like late 90s, early 2000s, totally different. Right now, hardware is incredibly difficult because there's so many things in place to stop you. I think the big players see hardware as a way to force everyone onto their platforms, and they'd rather you be a software app developer. So I think
Yeah,
like
and
Jerry's swimming against like massive currents. I know the
well,
platform.
investors just don't have the patience to see a return on a hardware investment. I mean, you know this better than anybody, Rody. They
Well,
they want to see a return on investment, and hardware takes time to see a return on
but,
investment.
but let me throw out a flag which is very pro Jerry. Like Humane got 250 million, 300 million, something like that, at $1 billion valuation.
Mhm.
Uh, I think if you look closely at what Jerry's done with so little capital, why can't the powers that be in the investing world put 30, 40, 50 million in? Not like 250, but 30, 40, 50 million would take a Tilt 5 and make it like a profitable company. I
Investors, call me, call me. I'm
yeah,
ready to
this
have
is
that
like an ad for
conversation.
I'm look,
Jerry at Tilt 5.
Yep,
I
that's
wish I
it.
wish the three
JR.
of us had our
Jerry
own
with an
fund.
I.
Yeah.
Because Jerry would be like the bet to make. If you are a hardware investor and you're looking for who to put money in, literally Tilt 5 is this case of like smart, lean, figured something out, has got it going without too much help, solved a bunch of problems with very little capital. Is exactly what you want to fund.
Oh, thank you, Roni. That's so sweet to say, and it's true too. So thank you. I've been having really good luck partnership wise over in Asia. I've spent, you know, months of this last year over in Taiwan and Japan, and they get it over there. They're still producing physical things, and so the conversations are much easier. I just came back from a long partnership visit over in Taiwan, and also did Computex, which is one of their biggest trade show events for electronics, and it was a really great experience doing that. We were kind of the belle of the ball over there, um, you know, for multiple reasons, I think. Like we ended up getting placed in the point of sale barcode scanner area, so we were the hottest thing around. But also just the quality of potential partners and investors that came through were much different than what you would get, at events, even at AWE, that are more understanding of
Mm.
this business. I mean, on the flip side, one of our challenges, like, it's the chicken and egg every platform has. Like, you need a critical mass, you need millions of people, and then your software side starts to get, very lucrative, you know, and doing those simultaneously on so little money is tricky.
But I think, Jerry, if you don't give up, you could create an American Nintendo. You know what I mean? When you think about that, like there's a Japanese Nintendo that's a curious little company that does not follow anybody. They have their own cool brands and their own cult following. They've done very well. And why can't there be an American Nintendo? Right. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that our main conference room at the office is dedicated to Nintendo. It's full of it's full of Nintendo artifacts and Nintendo Power magazines hung up as artwork and old game consoles. Is like, yeah, we feel our DNA is a lot closer to Nintendo than other
Mm.
companies out there. And Nintendo, like when you look at Nintendo products, it's amazing. Yeah, throughout history, they've not been the most advanced. The Game Boy, like at the time the Game Boy came out, was black and white, clunky. Yeah, yeah, there it is. Black and white, clunky compared to you had like Sega Game Gear and Atari Lynx, full color, like, nope.
I can tell you, I think the Wii is still potentially the best gaming platform that's ever been created. And to me, it is timeless. I don't care that the graphics are really low fidelity and kind of goofy. I actually love it. I love everything about the Wii. And kind of every time I go into VR, I kind of wish it was more like the Wii, like every time, you know?
Well,
I
Ted, I think
remember
what
when
you're
the I remember when the Wii came out, like, I run in some like hardcore gaming circles and everyone's, Spatooey, Spatooey, this thing's terrible. Like it's, you
No
know,
way. It's the best thing ever.
and then 4 weeks later, we all had Wiis. Like,
Yeah. I
yeah,
still like, it's been a few years since I've been to Korea, but I still, when I go to Korea, there's a whole bar culture around playing the Wii, the original Wii. And they set it up with like old VGA projectors, so it's because the tech has to kind of work end to end of that era to really work right, right? But you can go into these little bars and clubs, and there are people playing the Wii, like competitively playing the Wii, and it's fantastic. It's a great culture that
I heard
doesn't
through the
exist here.
grapevine that Nintendo has an internal saying they adopted recently with the adoption of, single screen devices. Our phones are just sucking us into these highly engineered,
Hmm.
endless scrolling. They call it Together Alone, and they're out to fight the Together Alone
Yeah, it's great.
um,
Yeah,
problem that we have
yeah.
right now. You just sit on the couch and you're just together, but you're just sucked in.
So,
Sure.
Jerry,
I think there's two things going on that are in your favor, more than that. One of them is just the massive investments by Apple, by Meta, by Samsung, by Magic Leap into the supply chain are gonna give you the flow of parts and components you need to kind of hit the price point on the more Nintendo like low cost fun, not the high end Apple Vision Pro version of what you're doing. I think that's one. Two, there's a backlash in Gen Z, and I think even the generation coming up, which is like they want like single purpose things. There's cassette players that look like Walkman. There's Gen Zers love to have like Olympus cameras or Canon power shots from like the early 2000s.
Hmm.
They're kind of a little bit sick of the everything. This is not a gigantic movement, but it's enough to make a company like Tilt 5 like super
Hmm.
profitable. So I think there's an interesting thing of like regaining social communication, especially after the pandemic.
It's like the
Um,
resurgence of vinyl, just that single
yes,
purpose kind of use case that's more socially connected. Yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely been seeing, it's been getting really good for us as far as unit economics, just like the evolution over the like couple years since we did our first introduction of the product. Like our margins have gone up, parts have come down in price, and so we start to project forward, like, what's going to be the hot new variation. It's like, oh, now there's a lot more interesting things we can do at a more attractive price point, which is, you know, the world right now, everyone's, struggling a bit with the cost of everything, and having like Apple and all the big companies with the cards on the table, a $3,500 headset here and there, it's going to be hard to get into people's homes. So I think there's a sweet spot that we can play in that's has to be ignored by the bigger players like Apple. Like Apple would never make a product like ours, just so fixed function.
They would
Yeah,
never make a Nintendo Game Boy, right? They
yeah,
wouldn't do.
exactly.
Are you facing the kinds of headwinds that other gaming companies are facing right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I haven't noticed as much problems from our perspective, although there's been partners we worked with that just evaporated overnight just because the market's so bad on the gaming side. So we've racked up some losses just because game studios disappeared. So it's to a small degree. Yeah, it's brutal out there in the game space right now. It's just you know talking about getting over your skis. There's lots of companies that really
Well,
over
VR chat just laid off 30% of their staff. We were talking about that right before we brought you in.
Yeah, I saw that. It's really sad. It's one of the more popular applications out there.
It's
But
hard. It's
it's
hard to
not
make
limited to
money.
VR. I
It's
mean,
hard to make money in social VR.
mhm.
So one of the things I always enjoy, Jeri, is seeing you at all the shows. Every show I cover, there's Jeri, there's Tilt 5, and you are always one of the people standing in the middle of the booth doing demos, which is kind of like the CEO is usually off to the side schmoozing other CEOs. Right. The CEO is not usually there, and again, it's not for profit, right? It's not like you're selling a zillion headsets. These are just jamokes like me and Ted stopping by to try whatever is new. And, there is no financial motivation. And anybody who's done any kind of a trade show knows that standing in a booth for 8 hours is brutal torture.
Yes,
And
yes.
at the
But
end of
I
the
love
day,
it.
I
I
know, and
love
at
it.
the end of the day, it's like people who are irrelevant and didn't buy anything. So, and you love it. Tell us about that.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I moved to Silicon Valley, started doing a lot of engineering work. I did, semiconductors and chips that got integrated into things, and it was satisfying and I felt proud of it, but I didn't have that ultimate pride until I started working with toy companies. And so I worked with toy companies to make full products. So we identified our audience, we optimized it, we made sure it was fun, and then we shipped it and, rolled the dice, and sometimes tens of millions of them sold. But to actually go to like New York Toy Fair and see people, that aren't even kids, like giggling and having a good time with something you designed was just like the ultimate high for me. And so that's extended into Tilt 5. So Tilt 5, people thought we were insane for doing this very narrow, focused product. They're like, well, why don't you just like try to make the universal device for everybody? I'm like, no, no, I've seen this before. Like narrow to your audience, and they're gonna love it. And I get that high every time I'm at the trade show. I'd rather be giving a demo and seeing people like have a good time and then engage with them if they, you know, if they're technical, I can talk for hours about like, every photon that's coming out of
Well,
the headset.
it's just likely born from your desire to build these social games, right? You
Mhm.
like the socialization. It is in your DNA, similar to me and and Charlie. I think Roni to a certain extent. We need to get him out more, but Charlie and I like the idea of seeing people in person and engaging and interfacing with them. It's why I like board games so much, and it's why I like what you're doing so much. I think it's why I like the Wii so much. It was social. Like, you hung out with people. You didn't just stare at your screen. Your screen was part of the world. It wasn't the world.
That's a really good point about Tilt 510, because it's both entirely new, yet it's taking something very familiar and really kind of old fashioned and reinventing it and making you see it in a new way.
The reason we loved pinball so much when we were kids is because you could watch your buddy.
Oh, is that what that is behind you?
Right? I mean, that's it, right, Jeri?
Pinball machine in your kitchen, it looks like.
Yep. I'm a pinball collector. I have 80
of course you are.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's really magical, like seeing people interact with Tilt 5. And that's why, I mean, we've been at it for 7 years. It's hard to imagine. We're coming up on 7 years in August, and it's been a slog. Like, if I was doing a boring, like, I don't know, a Google Glass type device, I probably would have quit, the first time I hit some kind of like a major roadblock. But, Till 5 as an organization, especially in the early days, we were always on the edge of going out of business because we didn't have enough money, or like there was a problem. But credit to our team, it's just such an exciting product to get out the door and see people enjoy. Like, the team stuck around us, and we just kept going and just brute forced our way through it with very little funds. And I blame Gabe Newell. So it was, I got the itch for this kind of experience because Gabe Newell hired me into Valve Software to put together the hardware team for them. And he gave me a simple mandate. He's like, our goal is to get the whole family to play games, get everyone out of their little silos, and even non-gamers like grandma and grandpa should be playing games with the grandkids. And it's like, wow, that's something I felt in the toy industry, but magnified like a million times over. Like, wow, the whole family. And that must be what it's like to, be an engineer working at Nintendo with the same kind of mandate.
Jeri, I think I'll make a statement that I think is a true one. It's a predictive true one. Like 2035, 2036, seemingly hard to believe that a whole generation of kids and their families are not wearing some lightweight thing, but at that final resolution and at 199 $299 price point, where you're sitting around the table playing all kinds of classic board games, new board games, playing in your living room, Mario guys jumping around, where your home or your table is that game board, and like D&D's transformed, and like all games now, building Lego blocks, there's like living creatures running around it seems like what you're doing will happen. The question is hanging in long enough to be there. I think that's the only thing.
Here's the other part of that question. Is it ultimately that you're, unrolling your game board and your software, and we're using devices that are not your bespoke devices connected to a PC, but rather a more universal device, like perhaps a Vision Pro, or perhaps, a future Meta device? Can you see that happening?
Is that a question to me, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, there's going to be continual incremental improvements in XR devices, and that's just how every emerging industry works. Cell phones were extremely clunky and then got less clunky, and then pretty soon we had them in our pocket 40 years later. Home computers are the same thing. I mean, they were things that there were 5 of them in the world, and then 100, and then only the enthusiasts had them in their home, and now everybody has 50 different computing devices in their home. Same's going to happen with XR. It's the natural evolution. It's got to happen. I mean, you can't put any more pixels on my phone. I can't see them. Like, and it's not because I have gray hair coming in. It's just like, what are you going to do with a 2D screen, right? How far can you go with that? We're kind of at the end of that tail.
That is a great place.
The answer is obvious. It's about staying power right now. Like, PCs were obvious, laptops were obvious. It was just hanging in long enough to survive until the form factor and pricing and supply chain came together. I think that's it. If you were a race
Yeah.
car driver, this is like a long Le Mans. You know,
Exactly.
we're only in like, I think, Jerry, we're
It's
only in the
always
first
won on
third
the
of the
last
race.
lap. It doesn't matter what happens in the middle. There's a lot of, you can make up a lot of ground. There's a lot of profit between now and then, but there's, the winners end on the last lap.
I think that's the name of the book, The Long Le Mans.
That's all the show we have, everybody. Next week will be show number 200. Ted and I are going to do it live from the exhibition stage in the expo hall on Thursday, next Thursday, the I guess 20th. So if you are at AWE, please come by. We're looking for guests. We have a few guest slots open. We want people who have not been on the show before that we only see at AWE, although we are going to have Sarah Hill, who was guest number 1 in July 2020 when we started to do this inside of VR. So Sarah is a former broadcaster, so we thought it would be good luck to have her as guest 1. It might rub off on us a little bit. So anyway, thank you everybody for hanging in there with us for 200 shows. And it's really exciting to do this every week. It's a great excuse to see my good friends and my old friends. And Jeri, I met you 8 years ago at AWE. That's how long we've been doing this. I like to say we've been getting old doing this, but I was kind of old when we started. So, all right, everybody. We'll see you at AWE. Hopefully, if not, have a great week. Listen to our podcast number 200, and here's to another 200 more.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay.